Hi everyone, and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're talking about baseball, but not the games, not the players, the World Series, but some kind of strange stories that have grown up around baseball, as stories grow up around many sports.
Oh, okay, that's true. A lot of sports have their myths and their legends, their great tales that go beyond the sport and just become part of popular culture.
That's
so we're
right.
going to be looking at that type of thing from way back in the history of baseball. But the interesting thing is that some of these stories started long ago.
Yeah.
And they continued on for decades and decades, right up to almost the time we're in now.
Yeah, last few years.
Yeah.
Do you ever go to see the games in Taiwan?
I have yet to see a baseball game in Taiwan. I would like to go, but every time I watch one on TV, they seem very noisy. And I'm a little afraid that all the drumming might give me a headache. But every summer I kind of say, I should go see a baseball. I used to go and see baseball games a lot in Montreal.
Oh, great.
Of course, had the Montreal Expos, who are now the Washington Nationals. And growing up, we would go 3 or 4 times a year. It was a good day out, and you get to sit there in the stands with the fans, eat your hot dog and your popcorn, and watch the good old baseball game.
Yeah, I've only been to one game in Taipei. I didn't really... We don't have baseball in Britain. I didn't really understand it, but by the end I had a better idea of what was going on.
I think if you can understand your game, cricket, then baseball is not quite as complicated. But you're right, learning any new sport is confusing at first.
Yeah, especially if you have to learn about some strange stories and curses, which is what we're getting into right now.
Reading.
Were these baseball teams really cursed? Most baseball teams play hard. However, they can't all become champions because some of them always lose in the end. In cases like this, it can be easy to think these teams must be cursed. The Curse of the Bambino. In 1919, the Boston Red Sox decided to trade Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees. He was an American sports hero who was nicknamed the Bambino. Before the trade, the Red Sox were often World Series winners. In the decades after the Red Sox traded Ruth, however, they only made it to the World Series 4 times. They lost every time. This led to talk of the awful Curse of the Bambino. The Red Sox finally broke the curse in 2004. They swept the St. Louis Cardinals for their first World Series title since 1918. The player who made the final out of the series was Edgar Renteria. He wore uniform number 3, which was Ruth's number.
So we start off by saying most baseball teams play hard. That, when you say play hard in a sporting kind of context, you mean they're playing to win. You know, they're trying their best. They're not just... They're maybe there to have a bit of fun, but this is a serious game. They want to win it. They want to be the best.
Absolutely. If you work hard, if you study hard, if you play hard, you're putting all of your effort and energy, and you're really trying to do as best as you can at that moment. So yeah, most baseball teams, they want to win. They want to win the World Series. They want to beat their opponents. They're not just out there going, whatever, I don't care. No, they do care, so they play hard. However, they can't all become champions because some of them always lose in the end. Yes, of the 30 or 36 teams in baseball, 35 of them will lose in the end. Because really, one team only can be the champion each year. And what is the champion? Well, the champion is like the winner, but the winner of all the winners, basically the only one left at the end when all the games have played, the team that beat all the other teams and won all the important games. And usually, of course, when you become the champion, they give you a gold medal, they give you a big trophy, your name becomes part of history for winning that year. You can be an Olympic champion, you can be an NBA champion team. There's lots of different places to win a championship, which is what we call that title. And if you win the championship, you are the champion. You are the best at whatever you were doing. Usually a sport, but we can have cooking champions or
baking champions.
Baking champions, a speech contest
singing
champions, singing champions. It means you're the number one in the competition. You came out the top winner. For example, Macy's brother is a champion surfer who has won many competitions.
Okay.
He's probably one of the best surfers in the world.
Now, in that sentence, we started with an adverb. We used however. And we can use adverbs at the start of the sentence to signal what we're going to say next and kind of put a mood or something about what's going to follow. We can use however at the start of a sentence to signal there's going to be a contrast against what we said before. We could start a sentence with fortunately or unfortunately, and this shows that what follows will be good news or bad news. They basically show the feeling or the manner that's given to the rest of the sentence. For example, it rained heavily all morning. Fortunately, it stopped by lunchtime. Now, when I said fortunately, you could tell there was going to be some good news to follow. I didn't even need to say what it was going to be. You go, okay, it was raining. Fortunately, and then somebody else could guess it stopped.
And of course, if you have some bad news or something bad happens, you can just say, unfortunately, it rained heavily all morning. Unfortunately, I forgot my umbrella. So I was very wet. All right, then we also had this phrase, in the end, talking about something happening in the end. This is a phrase we often use maybe at the end of a story, and we're kind of talking about all the action, all the different things that happened at the beginning and then in the middle of the story. And then we use this phrase, in the end, to kind of tell you, like waving a flag, this is what happened, this is the end of the story, this is how all the action finished up. So I went to school, I had a really great day, and in the end, I got home and my mom made me a pie or something like that. So I'm telling a story of what happened in my day, and this is kind of the final thing, the last chapter. This is where the story ends. All this action happens over time, and this is how it all finishes up in the end.
So, of course, in a competition of sports, some teams win, more teams will lose. But there always seems to be one or two teams who never win the big game. They always lose, even if they do well, they lose right at the end. And that's the kind of team we're talking about here. The article says, in cases like this, meaning those teams who just never seem to win, it can be easy to think these teams must be cursed. So here we're saying these teams are cursed. There's a few verbs and words related to it. A curse as a noun, this is an evil spell that someone is said to have put on you to bring misfortune. So it can be a noun, there's a curse on me. It can be a verb. The evil witch cursed Sleeping Beauty and made her sleep for 100 years. Or it could be an adjective with a D on the end. My computer is cursed. It never works when I need it to. So we describe these teams as being cursed. Somebody has put a curse on them so they never win. So we've got two curses, one tomorrow and one today. What's this first curse?
This is probably the most famous curse in baseball. In fact, one of the most famous curses in all of sports. It's called the Curse of the Bambino. That's the name of it. If you say that name to baseball fans around the world, if they know their stuff, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. So let's find out about the Curse of the Bambino.
Well, as Mike said, these are often old stories.
Very old.
This one, it's over 100 years ago. We see in 1919, the Boston Red Sox decided to trade Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees. Bit of a mistake.
A bit of a mistake, absolutely. That's Babe Ruth, he was an American sports hero who was nicknamed the Bambino. Yes, Babe Ruth was sort of the Michael Jordan of baseball of his day. He set records that were still there 50, 60 years later. One of the greatest baseball players who ever lived. So, of course, he was an American sports hero. Millions of baseball fans and kids looked up to him. He had this nickname, of the Bambino. He actually had a nickname of Babe Ruth.
Right.
I think his name was George Ruth, actually, but they called him Babe, and they shortened that to Bambino. And he, yes, was a hero. A hero is someone you look up to, someone you admire very much because of the great things that they do, because of the inspiration that they give you. It might be a person from a field or a world that you really look up to, that you want to become a member of. Maybe you might have a sports hero or a movie star hero, or maybe it's someone in your own life who you think represents the best qualities of a person, the best way to be a person, the best way to live your life. And if you kind of model yourself on them, look up to them in some way, you might describe that person as your hero. We also might use heroine, right? For a female hero, Heroine. Maybe Marie Curie is your heroine if you're a young woman or a young man who likes science or something like that. But it's someone you look up to. For example, Neil likes Spider-Man, but his real hero is his father, who works hard every day to help his family. That's nice. I like that.
Very nice.
That's very good.
So we said Babe Ruth was nicknamed the Bambino, okay? A nickname, when we mean it as a noun, is a short name or a fun name that's used by close friends and acquaintances. It's the way people might address you or call you, especially if they're good friends and they know the story behind it. Nicknames often come out of stories. We can use it as a verb if we mean somebody gives that person a nickname. It could be your close friend nicknamed you something. Your family nicknamed you something. For example, Hank is so tall that he was nicknamed Stretch by his basketball coach because he always seems to be stretching even when he isn't. So the Red Sox sell Babe Ruth or trade him to the Yankees.
That's right.
Kind of big rivals there.
Exactly. They were big rivals, both big teams on the East Coast. It says before the trade, when Babe Ruth still played for the Boston Red Sox, before the trade, the Red Sox were often World Series winners. Absolutely. Okay. Babe Ruth was, of course, a great batter, but at that time he was even more well-known and even more successful as a pitcher.
I didn't know that.
He could do both things very, very well, and of course, with great players like that, the Red Sox were often the World Series winners. We could also use that term we learned earlier, the World Series champions. They're the ones who won all the games, beat all the other teams, and were the best in the league or the best in baseball, so they were the winners for sure. When we have a winner, when we put a suffix ER on the end of a verb like this, we're kind of turning it into a noun, and we're saying that this person or this thing does that action. If you win, you are a winner. If you drive, you are a driver. If you cook, you are a cooker. No,
not quite.
That one doesn't work. So it doesn't always work.
Yeah, be careful.
But very often it does. If you play, yes, you are a player.
Okay, so the Red Sox were winning all the time, and then they trade Babe Ruth.
Yes.
We now see in the decades after the Red Sox traded Ruth, however, they only made it to the World Series 4 times.
That's over about 80 years.
That's not a lot.
No,
that's a big kind of downfall in fortunes.
Exactly. And of course, as soon as they traded Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees, they started to win all the time.
Yes.
And they probably won with him for 10, 15, 20 years. And it was many long decades of failure and no success for the poor old Boston Red Sox. Right. What is a decade?
A decade is just a 10-year period. We could talk about it just to mean 10 years. I have lived in Taiwan for over a decade.
Okay, sure.
That kind of thing. We can also use it to mean a particular decade of time, like usually from the 0 up to the 9, the 1920s, the 1950s, the 1990s. We often divide up the time into decades and talk about the music, the fashion, and so on from that decade. Here we just mean it was periods of 10 years, a long time before the Red Sox became even moderately good again.
Right.
For example, we could say Ruth has lived in Costa Rica for almost a decade. Okay, so she's been there nearly 10 years.
8, 9, 10 years, something like that. It's not important, but we know it's around 10. So that's why it's useful when you're telling your own history, for example. And then we also had this phrasal verb to make it. When you make it, you successfully do something. You achieve your goal, you reach your goal. We can also use it when talking about traveling. If you make it to the hotel or make it to your friend's house, you have arrived. You have successfully reached that place. So generally, when we say I've made it or I will make it or something like that, we're talking about being successful, achieving a goal, going somewhere, something like that.
So we said the Red Sox didn't make it to the World Series very often, 4 times in many decades. And what's more, as the article says, they lost every time.
Absolutely. They had some really good teams in there. They played some really great games in there. They almost got there so many times. It was heartbreaking to watch. And of course, since it happened for decades, this led to talk of the awful curse of the Bambino. When you have bad luck for a day or two, that might just be bad luck, right? But if you have bad luck for years and years and years, when everything around you changes, but your luck is always bad, you might start to think you've been cursed. Because we're being cursed, of course, having someone put bad luck on you so your life is difficult and terrible, this would be really awful. And awful is an adjective. We have many of these adjectives in English that talk about things that are really bad. Terrible, horrible, awful, very, very bad is what we're saying when we use this adjective. If you had an awful day, you're probably in a not good mood. If there's awful weather outside, you probably won't be having a picnic. And if you're feeling really awful, then maybe you're sick, maybe you should go to bed. You're just feeling really not good. You're feeling quite bad. For example, did you try that awful cake? It tastes like soap. Ooh, a cake that tastes like soap. Yeah, that sounds pretty awful.
So years and years, decades of bad, of awful luck, but it is over.
Yes.
We see the Red Sox finally broke the curse in 2004. So recent history, but if you think it started in 1919, so that's like 85 years of curse?
Yeah, there were a whole I remember when the Red Sox finally broke the curse, they won the World Series. I remember people saying, like, my grandfather would be so happy about it. He died many years, but people lived their whole life in Boston as a Red Sox fan, and they never saw the team have any big success because this curse went on so long. So what happened in 2004 to finally break that curse? It says that's the Boston Red Sox team. They swept the St. Louis Cardinals for their first World Series title since 1918. Yeah, 90-something years. A lot of years went by before they could finally win a World Series. And you can probably bet the city of Boston went crazy. People were so excited to finally have the World Series title. When we use title in this way, we're not talking like the title of a movie like Top Gun Maverick or something like that. That's the title. That's what the movie is called. Here, we're talking more about sort of like a championship. When you're the champion, you are now called the NBA Champions of 2002, or the MVP, the most valuable player. That will be your title. That's sort of like the formal name of the competition that you won, or the position that you now have as being the #1 in the world, or something like that. In boxing, we often talk about titles.
Big title fight. Who's going to be the world heavyweight champion?
They'll win that belt, and they'll be able to walk around for a year or whatever and call themselves the champion. I am the heavyweight champion of the world. I beat everyone. That title is mine. That championship or that position is mine. For example, one day Eric wants to win the title of best math student in the city. And he can't just walk around and call himself that. He has to win a competition.
Now, we say the Red Sox swept the Cardinals.
Yes, they did.
A sweep is a sporting term, means you beat them in a series of games and you don't lose a game.
You don't lose a game, that's right.
That's
so,
what
like in the NBA, it's the best of 7, the first team to win 4. You win all 4 games, you don't lose one. The final record is 4-0. You swept the other team.
Right. So next we see the player who made the final out of the series was Edgar Renteria. Okay, so he got the last of the Cardinals batters out in the 4th game. So he made the final out.
There you go. That's pretty awesome for him. I think he's an outfielder. He probably just caught a ball.
Oh, he caught it, did he?
Something like that. And here's an interesting little bit of history. He wore uniform number 3, which was Ruth's number.
Whoa.
Babe Ruth had the same number 3. We have to admit, number 3 is a pretty common number on a baseball team, but still, that's a little bit of interesting history.
Yeah.
Almost 100 years later, the guy who made the final play, won the Red Sox the World Series, had the same number as the guy who got traded and cursed the Red Sox.
Well, there we go. Sport does kind of have these nice little patterns and wrap-ups a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we're going to learn about another interesting curse tomorrow, but right now we're going to go to our For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So, we've talked about curses today.
Yes.
The question is, do you believe a curse can be real? Why or why not?
No.
Not magic curses like
not
that.
magic curses, no.
But it's all in the mind.
Yes.
If a team believes they are cursed, then they will kind of almost attract that bad luck.
That could happen.
They will sort of think about it too much and not about their performance or not about what they need to do to win.
Right.
They'll just think, oh, it's going to happen to us again. It's bad luck. Because the real top-level sport, every player is really good. It's not often you get the case of, oh, this team is amazing and this team isn't. By the time you get to a World Series, both teams are going to be the best two teams.
Generally, yes.
Should be. But it's all in the mind. If one team believes, oh yeah, we're going to win no problem, and the other team is like, oh, there's a curse, maybe, I'm not quite so sure, that's going to be the team that loses.
Very true, very true. But in the same way, we often hear about athletes who go out there and they imagine themselves winning. They imagine themselves getting all those three-point shots in. And then they do. And we don't say they're blessed. We say they used psychology to help themselves. But if you want to call a curse as using psychology to hurt yourself, yeah, I believe in it. But do I think they could go to a witch and have her mix up a potion with black cats and bats and stuff like we often think of curses? No, I don't think it works that way. But you're right. The mind is a very powerful thing. If you believe you're going to fail, yeah, you might fail. It's quite likely.
Well, we'll see what happens with the other curse tomorrow and if and how it was broken. Join us tomorrow for that. See you then.
Vocabulary Review.
Champion. Billy won the final tennis game to become the champion of his region. Hero. Larry saved the little boy from the fire and became a hero to many people. Nickname. His real name is Douglas, but he was nicknamed Doogie. Decade. 20 years ago, this whole town didn't exist yet. What a difference 2 decades can make. Awful. Yesterday was fun, but the weather was awful. It was cold and rainy all day. Title. The winner of this game will win the world tennis title for their school.
智慧小补帖
Curse.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net